Hi there, friends. I'm Vasco. I'm part of the team behind the first global Scrum Master Summit. If you're a Scrum Master, the Scrum Master Summit is a place to learn, to share, and to meet new friends. We will have lots of live sessions where you can meet and network with other Scrum Masters from all over the globe. So make sure you check it at bit.ly/SM Summit and the numeral 21. That's bit.ly/SMSUMMIT21. We have 7 amazing keynotes or more, as we are still organizing the conference as I record this, and 8 tracks that feature people like you and thought leaders sharing their insights and knowledge to help you become an awesome Scrum Master. So once again, check it out at bit.ly/SM Summit 21. That's all lowercase, all one word, SM Summit and the numeral 21. I'll see you on the virtual conference floor. All right, now on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday, the Leading Change episode this week with Susannah Chambers. Hi, Susannah. Welcome back.
Hi, Vasco. Thank you.
So, given all the stories you've told us during this week and what you shared about your past, I'm really interested to hear your story of change. So, Susannah, let's talk about change and how we as Scrum Masters need to take that into account and what we can learn from your own experience, the tools, the tips, the tricks, the techniques that we need to know to help our teams, the team members, and the organizations we work with successfully navigate change. So share that story with us, Susannah.
Yeah, there was a Scrum Master contract I had, which was for an international education project. And as you know, I'm based in the UK, but the project involved us having students out in Southeast Asia studying online. Now, ironically, this was just before COVID. So the purpose of the project was to encourage students to travel and learn online. So that ended up happening anyway with the pandemic. But in the lead up to that, it involved us making the transition from having a Scrum team that was completely based in the UK to having a geographically split Scrum team. So I realise this is very much the norm for many Scrum teams, with people offshore and international collaboration. But the crucial thing from my point of view as Scrum Master was it was actually facilitating and supporting with that transition from us all being in the same building as a Scrum team as we got established on the project, and making that transition to several of those members of staff then going out on location, but then still needing to keep the momentum going with things like the daily stand-up, having retros and just basic things like how did we culturally adapt our scheduling of those, for example, for the different time zones, because inevitably that is a factor. And also when we made the transition to some of the Scrum team members being overseas, they were also busy, of course, then with the students doing activities on location. So there were all of those additional factors that we had to consider in the way that we worked through the stories.
Absolutely. Now, I'm very interested to hear how this happened because, of course, we are recording this in early 2021. So we have behind us 1 year of working remotely. But unfortunately, many of us also have ahead of us 1 year of working remotely and perhaps much more since the pandemic has not subsided yet. So walk us through how that worked, because I'm sure there were specific challenges in communication, collaboration. How did that transition work, and what were those steps that you and the rest of the team deliberately took to help that transition to happen from co-location to distributed?
Well, the answer in one word, in a few words, is with great difficulty. Because I failed as a Scrum Master in presuming that because it was a small team that it was going to be an easy process. But actually, I had the converse experience. Ironically, some of the bigger teams that I've worked with in my time as a Scrum Master have ended up being easier to adapt and pivot. What I actually found with this team was that almost because it was so small and it was very kind of set in its ways, it was a family business. They absolutely struggled to get their heads around how they could have two different locations for working on the same things. So what tended to happen was, when we started the project and we were using Scrum, everybody seemed to be very much on the same page about how we were approaching it. People were quite excited about approaching this project in this way. And then it was almost as if, as soon as some people were going on location, it was as if conceptually people couldn't handle the idea that it would be geographically applicable in both continents. So I did fail in assuming that would be a straightforward process. And I also failed by not realizing how much advance work and preparing the ground I would need to do, even on an individual basis with some of those team members, to understand what their perspective was in terms of, what Scrum is, how it could work across different locations. So that definitely was a learning point for me. And in terms of how we saw the impact of that play out, it was very visible in it taking a few weeks to settle back into some kind of decent cadence with the daily stand-ups and the ceremonies, because we were trying to keep the timings as they were, because that's what the people that were back in the UK were used to. That's what they expected. So we had people that were tending to turn up to the office even when there had been communications saying that there were adjustments in timing, that were still turning up at the same time, expecting stand-up to happen. And of course, that just didn't work. So we had a few weeks where communication was very challenging. And the way in which we managed to come out of that was we had really, really good ways of working discussion to air all of the concerns, but also the ideas for how we could find a compromise to make sure that we could carry on working with Scrum ways of working in a way that didn't require people to be up in the middle of the night or up extremely early in the morning, and make sure that we were still delivering our product, which ultimately was great student learning experiences.
Absolutely. So I'm thinking that as you started to see the problems in communication and the fact that some team members were just not perhaps acknowledging that something had changed, and you talked about openly discussing that problem with the team. I'm thinking that was kind of one of the steps you took to help this change along, right? So kind of open up the discussion and allowing the team members to come up with shared solutions. Is that how it went?
Yeah, very much so. And, where I've alluded to what I consider to have been a failure on my part as a Scrum Master, it really taught me the lesson that, as with our Agile teams, we're constantly working very rapidly, aren't we? We're having to pivot, we're having to pick up on things. And I was going to say that as Scrum Masters, I never think you can invest too much time in trying to understand perspectives, both through things like the health checks, through sprint retros, but also really at that individual level as well for the people that make up the team. For what are their concerns, what are their drivers, what do they see as being the problems? I think that as Scrum Masters, again, we have a lot of agency, we have a lot of responsibility to also almost be those horizon scanners. Clearly we can't be mind readers, but any Scrum Master will know what I'm talking about when I say that sometimes we just know, don't we? Sometimes we just get that gut instinct. We just know when something is heading down the track at a team. And as part of our responsibility to enable teams to solve their own problems, I think part of that is flagging where we see things coming up and trying to understand those perspectives before they become problems. And as I say, in that situation, that was something that I didn't do as well as I could have on that occasion, because I made a false assumption that the small size of the team would make it easy. And let's just say that ever since then, I've been very active in my pursuit of trying to horizon scan and equip teams with information that might be helpful before they reach that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that idea of horizon scanning or looking ahead kind of reminds me that as the team is so focused on the work that they need to deliver, it is incumbent upon us to look at what might be the possible, obstacles or rocks in our sailing trip ahead, to use the sailing boat metaphor here. And not necessarily to say, hey, here's a rock, but to bring that to the attention of the team. Hey, have you guys considered what happens if? Have you heard about? Like, just constantly bringing to the attention of the team some things that we see as potential threats. And then, of course, I mean, the team is a group of responsible and, of course, self-driven and independent adults. So they need to make a decision as to whether they want to take that into account or just say, no, that's not a problem for us or whatever. But that kind of reminds me that we are a little bit also like the lighthouse. I think that's one of the metaphors that I used in the past here on the podcast, that we are there to show or to shed light on potential obstacles, but it's still the team that needs to take ownership of that. But if we don't do that work, if we don't bring those potential obstacles to the attention of the team, then the team might not be equipped to handle the obstacle as it arrives.
Yeah, Vasco, it's great how you're articulating that, and that idea, the lighthouse, the shine in the light. I think I probably acquired that phrase from listening to many hours of this podcast whilst driving around to work pre-COVID. But I often use that phrase with teams, shining the light on an issue. And one of the things I often refer to with teams and individuals is, about shining the light inwards. So, in effect, that importance of being honest, being honest with ourselves about where could we improve, where have we failed, what was really going on in the experiences that we've had, and just really kind of using that as an opportunity to encourage psychological safety in teams as well. Because, as you say, unless people are able to shine that light on their own learning, it's going to be very difficult for teams to perform optimally.
Absolutely. Great story. Thank you for sharing that, Susannah.
Pleasure, Vasco. Thank you.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.